If you enjoy truthful and heartfelt conversations to inspire you to become a better version of yourself, empowering stories will help you. Hello, Laura. How are you?
Hey, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Very, very well. I'm delighted to have you in the program, and I know you very well because we saw each other during the weekend at a workshop, and it was beautiful and an honor for me to have some time with Laura and get to know into this woman a little bit more. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about who Laura Wynne is. According to LinkedIn, she's a yoga teacher with a demonstrated, and this is important, history of working in the health, wellness, and fitness industry. She's got a BA in psychology and a BSc and a BSc focus, whatever that is, in applied mathematical science from DCU, from Dublin City University. She's skilled in non-profit organizations, coaching, event management, curriculum development, team building. And what I can tell you that's not written on LinkedIn, and it's because I've interacted with this beautiful woman here, is that she thinks big picture. She's very intelligent, like she's very fast getting complex concepts. She has a critical thinking, which I think is admirable. No bullshit. What she says is what she thinks. She doesn't beat around the bushes, even though she's Irish, and that's something that Irish people do. And she's true to herself. I absolutely admire this woman, and she's going to tell us more about herself.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. My God. Yeah, that LinkedIn is definitely a bit flat. Actually, haven't read it in ages. So I just feel, thank you.
Welcome. Tell us, Laura, something that you would like to share about the feminine energy. I know that you're very linked and you work with women mostly. Tell us something about the feminine energy now in 2022.
Okay, cool. Well, what I do is I train yoga teachers, which at the minute have all been women, and I teach yoga, and it's not it's my public classes are majority women, but and my one-to-ones are actually mainly men. But in terms of that energy, well, I think right now it's just knackered. It's a really exhausted energy. And yet it's spring, so I think it's changing. I think COVID has definitely depleted people in ways that they're not even necessarily aware of yet. But it's like a little bud. I can see people their eyes are starting to shine again and ready to start. I think for a lot of the people that I work with, we got really busy after being still. Then everybody and thinking still was really good. Then got really, really busy. And now I'm wondering, is there a little insight of, can I find balance? The nothing and the over busyness, that somewhere in between the two. But certainly a lot of the women that I work with would be like that. And a lot of people that I work with, including myself, because obviously that's who I get to work with most, overcommit, over stretch themselves, over end up giving from empty, because we're giving, and holding and looking after all of these balls, and forget to also nurture ourselves, so that we can come from that other place, that place of abundance, as opposed to a place of exhaustion, and then after exhaustion maybe a little bit of because we're still being asked to give when we haven't given to ourselves.
And why is that? Why do we give?
Why?
We have not been programmed to give ourselves first and then put the mask on ourselves before we put it to everybody else.
Oh, it's funny, isn't it? What I mean, that because I even use that, and as I do it, I remember when I was in a plane thinking, oh my God, that's so selfish. It's just so selfish. How could you do that? Like, why would you? And certainly with the people, with myself as well, and with the people that I work with, that whole thing about being selfish. And I think that's definitely not just Irish, but certainly it's very strong. It also seems to me to be strong with women generically.
So it's a sex thing. Is it because the world has been ruled by the masculine energy before, do you think?
Is it because the world has been ruled by the masculine energy? Yeah, the world has the world been ruled by the masculine energy? The structures are all very masculine. You know, the infrastructure is very masculine. But I wouldn't underestimate women's power in the world before, you know, in the background. But it would be nice for us to have more balance, that it's that the structures are more balanced, and that we don't have to be defined by being a caring role, that we can be caring and be giving, and that we also count. Maybe that's it, that we also count. And so we're worthy of receiving from ourselves as well, which is also a hard concept, I think, for people to embody.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the corporate world, for instance. I myself worked in the corporate world for 20 years, so I can speak from there. And my observation, and obviously it was my observation, completely partial and skewed, was that it was all masculine, and us women had to fit into there.
Had to be masculine, had to be aggressive, had to work the way they work, yeah, and deny the other side of us, 100%, yeah, and we're very good at it. But I'm not sure that it feeds our soul. And I think also men, though, maybe men are nervous about sounding feminine as well. I mean, there's also that side of it. Whatever about a woman imitating male behavior in order to progress in a male environment. Are there men in a male environment that also need to feel that they need to be that strong macho man and can't be more sensitive, allow some of their more what we call feminine traits come out?
Yeah.
You know? I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. If we as women behave very masculine in the workplace, the men to feel manlish, they would have to go even further away, more to the extreme, into being a man. So none of us is happy in our own shoes, because we're all pretending at the end of the day.
Yeah. But I think that whole pretending, I mean, I love that. That's a fantastic pretending, that we're all pretending at the end of the day. For me, that's it's a whole lot. I mean, we don't even have to go to the corporate world. Go to a school drop-off. Like, is there any mum there going to say, well, you know what, the dishes are still on the table, and I haven't washed the floor in 2 weeks because, like, I never get around to it. And by the way, I'm worried about this and this, whatever. You know, how, like, we're not real when we're even around women. We're not real.
I'm not wearing shoes right now.
Well, me neither. But then I'm a yoga teacher, so I'm
I'm wearing socks.
Oh, you do wear socks? Oh, no socks.
I did put on a bra for this interview.
I feel very privileged.
There you go.
Thank you.
Talking about privilege, I had the privilege and the honor of teaching this woman stock market, how to invest in the stock market. And within that group, Laura, you were the best student of them all. I can tell.
Thank you.
How can a person with apply BSc focus, whatever that is again, in applied mathematical science, a degree in psychology, so good at math, so good at critical thinking and thinking big vision and understanding very complex ideas, ended up teaching yoga?
Oh.
Tell me.
Tell you. Wow. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's less. I'm not saying it's less.
No.
It's that from the outside, it doesn't seem exactly, you see, what you would project with that background.
Yeah. No. Well, I loved maths in school. I loved, and I'm dyslexic. I think that really helped that big picture skill, because I had to. So I'm really good at seeing patterns and seeing connections and that kind of stuff. So I really like that. So I didn't have the points to do psychology when I was 18 or whatever. And thank God, because I'd have been far too young. So I did maths, worked in the corporate world, in the suit, in banking, in that whole thing. And then, but I saw the people, the women, the women who had children and what happened to them and their career within that industry, within software banking. So I gave that up and went and studied psychology.
Sorry, what is it? What do you observe with those?
What did I observe? Well, their career was over.
All right. That's it.
Like, that's it. Like, what more can you say? Like if you have to pick up a kid at a crash at a particular time and the men are still sitting around, talking whatever and having, anyway.
Dot.
Yeah. And then this business of, I tried for a while after I had kids, this idea of part-time work. Has that, that when the women do part-time work, which means they get paid half the amount of money, they do the same amount of work as they used to do it, they fit it in around everything else, and they still get slagged off because they're only there part-time. I tried that one as well. When I studied psychology, I'd started getting a lot involved in philosophy, personal development, and because I had my maths, I had a placement in a hospital, which would have got me into my master's. But my sense was that the health service, it works very effectively at having patients who are treated, and it wasn't a very empowered environment. So I worked with a few fantastic teachers and chose not to go into the system, because going into the system, I just didn't see how you could do empowering work in the system. And hence into life coaching. Spent a little bit of time as a primary school teacher when my kids were that age in a Steiner school. So I've got a whole of the philosophy there. Did a little bit of work for about 10 years with the Toltec, the 4 agreements.
Yes, the 4 agreements, they were written by the Mexican person.
Exactly.
Dr. Miguel Ruiz.
Exactly. So, but I was working with one of the teachers then. We used to bring over teachers to Ireland, and we ran little groups here in Ireland, bringing the 4 agreements, the Toltec tradition, actually, as opposed to, but the 4 agreements is a fantastic doorway in to the Toltec tradition. And so all these different kind of things. But then, I'm a slight overachiever and like to burn out. So,
what? You're an overachiever.
What? No. So a couple of times during my life, I kind of burnt out. So the last time that I burnt out, I made this really conscious decision to do something that would support me to look after myself. So this business about feeding ourselves and giving to ourselves, it took me, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4, burnout, flat on the ground situations. And eventually I realized that I needed to do something that would feed me. And I also know myself well enough to know that I want to go out. So teaching yoga seemed like a fantastic support, because in order to say to somebody, you should do a yoga practice every day, I can't say that unless I'm doing a yoga practice every day. Oh, you should breathe. Like, no, I should breathe, So I get to go to every single class I teach, and I get to go to every single teacher training that I do. So I get to hear it all again and again and again, in an effort to support me wake up, and in that process, maybe hold out a hand to other people who want to have a little bit of support in their lives to wake up. I ended up as a yoga. I didn't end up. I am manifesting being a yoga teacher and trainer. And I suppose what I really love about yoga is it encompasses everything. It has the physical movement, but it has the philosophy, it has the psychology, it has the breath, it has managing your money, being abundant with your money. If there's a dark area, if we haven't, as women, I work with a lot of yoga teachers, and that whole insecurity around money, the oh my goodness, like, you want to get me going about not being worthy to earn money, not being that you shouldn't charge money for yoga, that all of our insecurities that we own show up when we look to teach something like that and ask for an exchange, a monetary exchange for something that. So I get to learn that continuously. Every time I'm coaching someone or mentoring someone, I get to see myself again and again and again, and just play with this fantastic manifestation of me there is here to learn so much.
Was it something that you were practicing before, or it just
Yeah. No, I was practicing yoga when I was in college. I went in to study in a room one day and there was all these people standing on their heads. And I went, oh, I wonder what that is. And I'd never even heard of yoga. So I got three lads actually, that was, and we went back the next week and we've been doing yoga ever since. So that was when I was 18. That was,
wow.
So, and I've been meditating. I was a stress bunny. As I said, I was dyslexic and I was a totally stress bunny in school. So one of my teachers at my leaving ceremony, one of the teachers took me aside and taught me how to do self-hypnosis. That's what they called it then, which is ultimately meditation, count back and relaxation meditation.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that since then, whenever I was 16, 17. I have a reasonable amount of experience of it.
You mentioned a couple of times that you're dyslexic. I've heard that many successful people are dyslexic. Do you think there's a relationship there?
100%.
Is there? Tell
100%.
I don't know anything, so please tell me as if I didn't know anything, because that's the case.
So you take a kid and you put them in an education system that is all, now it's better. It's much, much better now. So if you remember, like it's, I don't know, 20, 30, well, it's more than 20, 30, whatever, 40 years ago, when I was in the education system. But you take a kid, you put them sitting on a chair for starters, so we won't even talk about why that's a disaster. And then you give them a book and you teach them to read. Now, we'll even ignore the fact that they don't need to read until they're 7, like teaching kids to read at 2, 3, 4, 5, like it's nuts. In Spain, it's 7, is it, when they start to learn formally?
7, we're already reading and writing.
All right, so you're nuts as well. So Northern Europe is a little bit more balanced. But like up until the age of 7, the brain is still like it's creating all these synapses, as we were learning about at the weekend, and then it's up until around 2, and then it's paring them back and peeling them back. So kids can show these tendencies, the tendencies towards dyslexia at that age and not be dyslexic because the synapses haven't paired back yet. But ultimately, some of ours don't pair back. So we end up with like firing stuff all over the place, which makes it very hard for us to concentrate, makes it hard for us to follow a line. Our eyes are jumping all over the place, makes it hard there's a whole lot of sort of symptoms. They're not symptoms, they're gifts, challenges, whatever. Traits. But the difficulty isn't that, because that's, I think, why your dyslexic people often can see big pictures, can also often make connections, because we haven't been hardwired in the same way. We're not quite as linear. There's more connections between the 2 lobes of the brain. There's a whole lot going on there. But so you take a child and you put them into an environment where what is expected of them in the way it's expected of them that they can't do. So it's not that they can't learn. It's not that they may be able to read to some level at some stage, depending. But if you're giving all of the information through books, through written form, and you're asking it back through written form, and if the teachers don't have an understanding of what's going on and how these children may learn differently, then one or two things are going to happen. They're going to succeed, find a way to succeed, or they're just going to fail completely. But when I say find a way of succeeding, so in my family, we're all dyslexic. My brother didn't succeed academically. He succeeded differently. So he struggled so much. He found other ways to succeed. So setting up businesses and doing other stuff. He did other things earlier because my parents, I suspect, he had enough sense of self, to the faith to go do that. Whereas you take another kid in the same environment where maybe they believe what the teachers are saying, or the feedback. It's not even the teachers have to say it. You know yourself. Your kids, they'd have known exactly where everybody was in the school. Who was better than at maths? Who was better than at history? Who was, they know in the class. They know. So like to suggest kids don't know this is, even in the Steiner system where, we don't do testing, we don't do any of those kind of things, so the kids don't get that feedback, they still all knew. The kids are getting this feedback all the time. In my case, I was a little bit driven to prove the teachers wrong. So I became a little bit strongly academic, a little bit. My brother's reaction was to prove the teachers wrong differently. He left the education system to prove them wrong by becoming a business person, but that same
drive
drive just brought us in different ways. But equally, that same drive, like you think of those kids, then certainly for me, hand-eye coordination is all off. So sports wasn't a release, because you couldn't play team sports and not be able to catch the ball. Like, then, it's not socially, really doesn't win you friends. If you're trying to kick a ball and it runs by you, as even though it's just touched your foot and it keeps going, or you're trying to play tennis and you can't connect the ball with the tennis racket, so the social outlets, that they let off steam opportunities for dyslexic kids when they're 6-7 hours a day in an environment that is so stressful for them that physically hurts their brain. They're physically not able to focus their eyes. They are physically tired. On top of that, the emotional side of feeling like they've been failing, that they're not good enough, that they're not going to get somewhere, all that kind of stuff. And then the restrictions in ways of them to let off steam, because a lot of the sports are not helpful and their coordination may not be good and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think if you, for a lot of people, when they find ways around that, find alternative around it, I think that's why you've got so many successful dyslexic people in the business world, because they're used to problem solving, not thinking that they're not even conscious that they're laterally thinking, just because it's what they do, it's how they're programmed.
Yeah. That's their natural way. Right, it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to start watching videos about dyslexia, because in my huge ignorance, I thought that it was confusing the letters one with another, like P and B and D and nothing else. I didn't know that there was something behind, like hand coordination. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and even like confusing the letters, so if I'm reading anything, I'll have something under a line, something, and particularly color, so I can keep my place as I go down, because other than that, I'd lose my place, I have to refocus. So it's very tiring, very physically stressful to read text, just that coordination. So then have you got the brain space left to interpret what has happened? So they find, like, for example, I went to all of my classes. I never missed a lecture because I would learn listening to what the teacher said, and I'd remember that. I never read a book because I couldn't read a book. So I got notes books because they're done in bullet points, and then I can kind of get that out. But to read a novel, I never read any of my English novels, but I took the information by going to the classes and listening, and then extracting it from books of notes and stuff like that, as opposed to the text was too dense.
Yeah, there's always a way. Wow, that's fantastic. I'm thinking that, you see, those are traits, but somehow maybe dyslexic children in the school are wrongly labeled as not good enough. But does that happen with children who are not good at music? I don't think so. Does that happen to children who are not good at languages? Well, you can do science. People who are not good at science, you can do arts. Why is this label and this this scarlet letter on dyslexia, when it could be you're good at this and this and this, you're not good at this? But that's for everybody.
100%.
It's for everybody. Some people can't sing for shit.
Yeah, me. Couldn't hold a note for love nor money.
Some people can't draw even a sardine looking like an infinite symbol. But they don't get the scarlet letter. It's like, it's whatever. But dyslexia is, I don't know, it's carried with more of a stigma, social stigma, isn't it?
Is it still carried with a stigma? I think probably it is. I suppose because I came to terms with it reasonably quickly, and I did a lot of advertising for or publicity for the Dyslexic Association, because I was doing a degree. It's like, imagine you could be dyslexic and still do a degree. I'm like, of course you can. Why would you not? It never crossed my mind that it wouldn't. But I think it's at least it's heard of now, and at least now people aren't forced to study languages. If you're dyslexic, you don't have to study Irish or French or a foreign, a European language, and you can get into college without that, which is fantastic. And there's a little bit more understanding about how to support kids, how to teach, and I think the teaching methods are improving, and there's still loads of work to do with it. Like, sensory breaks should be for everybody, not just for the kids with SNAs. Everybody needs a sensory break, needs to move, needs to just from every perspective, like how is your brain going to learn if you can't? Your brain is better at learning if you also involve the body.
Yes.
So even teaching, like I do a course for teachers during the summer, the summer training, where we look at, it's called yoga for the classroom. But for me, it's not just about like, let's go do this. It is that, but also like, why aren't we doing maths when we're doing tables? Using the body the whole time. So there's all sort of rhythms. They can walk in two. So you take a step, jump. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's loads of ways of bringing movement into rhythm when we're teaching both language and numbers. So the more we can do that, and there is a movement. Some schools are open to it, some teachers are open to it, and it's improving.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Tell me about the women that you teach there.
My God, my women.
Your women. Tell us about you.
So the women doing that are learning, they're training to become yoga teachers. I am just so privileged. They're women that have a little bit of life experience. So that's not about an age thing. It's about they're kind of going, okay, I know how it can work, but maybe there's another way of working. Maybe there's other things we could do. They're curious, they're open, they're willing to have a bit of fun. Having a little bit of fun, yeah, because I teach embodied yoga, which is really about coming into your body, because we have so much wisdom held in our body. And our body, so you'll know yourself, if something happens that you're feeling a bit angry about, or somebody asks you to do something that you're like going, So your mouth may say, yes, of course, but your body, much wiser, goes, something where someone has maybe overstepped a boundary of yours that you haven't been clear about. So it could be something very simple. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Will you do something for me? My experience is, certainly for me, so pre-programmed to answer yes, of course, yes. Let me move 12 things around so I can do it. So my mouth is speaking, yes, right? But my body has got this contraction has happened in my body. And then I feel guilty. Do you know that one? Oh, they asked me to do it. And sure, why wouldn't I do it? Because sure, they have this and they have that, and sure, they have a broken leg, and sure, blah, blah, blah. And I've only got this. And I said yes. And then I feel bad because I felt bad about I still said yes, but then I got to feel bad about having like anything going on. What I'm looking at doing is saying, well, if your body is speaking to you, there's some wisdom in that. So what is the wisdom? I'm not saying you don't help the woman with the broken leg to do her shopping. I'm not saying that. Go help the woman with the broken leg to do her shopping. Grand. But listen to what your body is saying. So maybe your body is saying, that's a boundary of mine. So what is the boundary? Can I get clear about it? Because if I'm not clear about it, how can I expect anybody else to be clear about it? If I'm not clear what is breaching, what is or isn't okay, it's not right for me to get angry. My husband comes in, the dinner's not made, he's got a face on him, and I have a reaction. Well, he can have his face all he wants, but like if it's a boundary of mine that I want to not, I'm working for whatever until 6 o'clock and I'm only doing dinner at that, or maybe he's doing dinner. If I don't know that's my boundary, how can I expect him to know? Because if it's not clear with me and I haven't been able to express it and say, listen, on a Tuesday, I'm not doing dinner. But a key into knowing that, to discovering that, is in our body. So that if we can listen to that, listen to what our body is saying, notice, then we can sort of go, well, what was that really about? Was it that he made a face? Was it that I had or hadn't got the dinner made? Was it that I should be making the dinner at all in the first place? Where did it come to be that I had to make the dinner at all in the first place? Like, we both got full-time jobs.
Because you're the woman, Laura. You're supposed to.
Exactly. Now, has he ever said that? But he didn't never need to, because I had embodied that. I had believed that. So if I want to change that, I need to change it for myself. So this is exactly so that I don't take the head off him for expecting me to make the dinner. I realize, well, actually, hold on. I actually expect me to make the dinner, and I'm having this battle inside me about whether I want to be the one making the dinner or not. And he's only an observer until I've cleared it up here. And when I'm clean, then I can say, well, now this is what I would like. What would you like? And then we can have an actual intelligent adult conversation. Potentially, maybe not. So this is where I love having fun, because if we start to listen to this, because we're so used to shutting it down, then we can get this wisdom. And the yoga is like a playground in which we can start listening. So the insights, the eurekas, the growth that the women who are taking this class and then potentially may or may not go on to teach public yoga classes, but for them and for me, this personal growth that we have in this playground is really sacred. And then to think that potentially they may go then and create a playground for other women or for other people, they don't have to be women, for other people to have those same insights for themselves, about themselves, that nothing to do with anybody, at the same time as they can also get to feel better, they can get to move their bodies, because just physiologically we do too much sitting and we don't move in enough ways. And then we can breathe and all these other physiological things. We get our brain, meditation will really help our brain function, develop, it literally changes the shape of our brain. It's just magic. It is like gold. It's just
Your body is saying it all.
Yeah, and it's funny because we worked together for a year, and I'm like, oh, we need to do. It's so like just letting them just go. It's like, oh, it's amazing how quick the time passes. It's fantastic.
Yeah, but those women after 1 year, they, as you were saying, they can create this ripple effect and influence other people, even if they are not teaching, as you say.
Exactly.
Because when you're more in your body, that permeates outside. The vibrations will be different. Exactly.
So like even during the training, we work individually, like everybody's working for themselves and getting to know this, but their homes completely transform their homes. Just that change in energy to have transformed that. They transform relationships with their friends because they're coming to it from a different place. They're coming from a whole person, clearer as to who they are and what, like this, you talked about the no bullshit, just being clear, like, well, actually, I don't have to pretend. Like, isn't it perfectly good that whatever, I used to give out to myself because one of my friends, she used to bake her own bread. And one of my friends used to make her own yogurt. This is when I was in the like hippy dippy phase of my life. And one of them used to like grow their own vegetables. And somebody always brought cakes in for everybody. And somebody else, their kids did 3 or 4 different activities, whatever they were. And this other girl like did an hour and a half of yoga every morning. And then one day it just dawned on me, I'm beaten out of myself for not doing all of these things. There's nobody doing all those things. This was one person. The bread was one person. There's something else was a different person. There's somebody else was a different person. It's like I had cherry picked from 10 people and beat the bejesus out of myself because I wasn't those, whatever it was.
Ticking all those boxes of being the superwoman that
the superwoman.
We have to be because we have to be.
Yeah, and saying, well, sure, Mary can do it and she can do it and she can do it. But sure, there's no one, like it's like when we all, so this is, never mind changing the workforce. If we could just change, if everybody could just take off the BS and leave it there and just go, you know what? I am the most insecure little puppy and I'm afraid of my shadow. And you know what? So is everybody else. We're all just like the same.
Yeah. It's about coherence and congruency and being vulnerable and being ourselves instead of looking at those perfect pictures all photoshopped on Instagram in perfect places, scenarios, partners, trips. That's not true.
Yeah. I love that word. That for me, that being vulnerable. Being vulnerable. Like, is there anything stronger than being willing to be vulnerable publicly? It has to be the most. Yeah. The strength, the core inner strength, like not this like whoa macho strength, but this absolutely grounded strength. Here I am.
Yeah,
this is me.
Yeah, which is different of being a wimp. That's a completely different
story. Nothing about being a wimp. No, it's really strong because, and when I'm in this space, then I can say yes and no as So sometimes I'll say yes and do stuff that I kind of maybe don't really want to do, but I'm choosing to do it. I'm not pre-programmed to do it. I'm not acting out my program. I'm saying, okay, I'm willing, I'm up for it. And then I'll compensate in a different way. So maybe I'll go for a massage afterwards or something, I can have, but it's about looking after the whole thing, not just, not being in default mode.
I suppose it's about looking at ourselves, and when we see something that we don't like or that makes us feel under the weather, just embrace it and be okay with it rather than,
100%. And then not going with the intention of change, but because, like, if you think of taking a 2-year-old and they're having a tantrum on the floor, like, there's no amount you're giving out to them is going to make the slightest bit of difference, and no more telling them what to do would make the slight. Like, give them love, give them a big hug, hold them tight, give them love, and let them figure it out. And then the tantrum passes. Why do we not do that for ourselves? When there's something comes up, just embrace it rather than trying to deny it, fix it, suppress it.
Yeah, and turn into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Exactly.
So those women of yours, you love them. They change their lives. They change their household and their kids, I suppose.
Oh, their kids completely.
How do their kids grow up with these empowered women who embrace who they are wholly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they say 7 generations forward, 7 generations back.
Yeah.
If we make for all of the time, anything that I wake up about, so if I look at the patterns that I have, that I inherited from my mum, and how many of them did I inherit from me? This isn't science. This is just like, I have this big belief in how much of that came through when I was in her womb. Yeah. How it is to be a human being. Is it okay to be a human being in this world? Is it a safe world? And then the next 2 or 3 years when they were, when all these patterns are being laid down, and they're so deep, and they came from her mum, and they came from her mum, and they came from her mum. So, like, to see these generational patterns manifest in me, this driven, if the teacher said it was no good, I'll show them. Like, is that a free choice? No, it's not. It's a pattern. So if I can, I'm not saying that as a free choice, I mightn't also do the degree, but it's, do you know what I mean? It's a different freedom from a pattern. But if I can clear that pattern for me, then by default, my children, it'll be clear for my children and my grandchildren and grandchildren going forward, I think. Yeah. So it's a work that we do.
I do believe exactly the same. And the biggest step for us is to be conscious of the pattern.
Be conscious, yeah.
Because if we don't know what we don't know, then we will do just as our mothers did. And their mothers and
that not unknown. But and then for me, a really important thing is so we can become conscious of the pattern and then compassion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's like, why not just love it? Not like, oh, I'm like this because of my mommy, or oh, I have to fix this, or oh, just like, wow, it's not exciting. Look.
Yeah. I've just finished a book about that. It's about narcissism with compassion. But it took me years, Laura. It took me years to get to the point where I could feel compassion, because I was feeling first depression, sadness, rage, hatred, blame. I went through everything, and it took me many years to go to the place where I could actually really feel, not think about it, feel compassion. It took me many years. I wonder if by moving my body a bit more, that could have been released before, because our cells keep everything in.
Memory, they do,
they're there. And there's no vibration of music or of rhythm or of anything. There's no vibration to shake it out. It's like shaking the pot,
Yeah, 100%.
When the food is stuck at the bottom, we shake the pot. Yeah. But if we don't shake our pots, everything gets there all stuck.
And we can become quite stagnant and attached to it. So sometimes just a good out, it's like feeling better after you go dancing, you know, a good out, shake out, good movement. And like you said, because it's totally in every cell, there's that memory of whatever it is. So, and I think rage is a fantastic place to be in and move through, you know, because sometimes as women, and this is another big thing of mine for women, is that we're afraid of our anger and we're afraid of our rage, and we become these kind of angry, but like suppressed anger. Country all like, rather than just allowing ourselves to be angry, because it's not very ladylike, but to be angry. Like the anger is a message. All of these, they're messages that they're like invitations to explore and to find out what's beneath it. So like you playing with that anger and allowing it to be there, you get to find what's underneath it. So that might be rage, and then behind that might be compassion. Before that, it might be sadness. It might be an unmet need. It might be an insight of like, wow, I really feel lonely or isolated or neglected, or I mean, there's all of these onion like layers, and allowing them all be like, there's none of them is wrong and none of them is right, and they're there. So why would we pretend they're not? But for me, this idea of it comes and it goes. So I have another friend who is dare I say, go back to the dyslexic thing, but like the second thing that they say is, hi, I'm blah, and I'm dyslexic. It's almost like a definition, and often we do that for our emotions. Oh, you know, I'm angry, or you know, say it's about your mother or something, like, oh, well, there's my mother. And straight away we're attached to being angry about it because we've got a right to be angry about it or whatever, you know. So whereas if we can allow ourselves be angry, but not attached to being angry, then the anger can go. Once it's given you the message, once it's told you what it's here to give you, once you've received that gift, it's gone, it's finished, it's done its business. It wants to go somewhere else. But we sometimes hold on to it tightly. And movement can be really helpful in that, you know, just to allow it arise and allow it go.
Yeah, we keep the shit in a box, and because
Exactly.
we don't open it. And
exactly.
then there's another one and another one, instead of just open it. Yeah, that's okay. That's my shit. And then move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you the women that you coach and teach, do they get physical breakthroughs sometimes in the classes? Like they do some movement and then they start bowling or
yeah, absolutely.
Screaming, or do you get that?
Haven't had anybody screaming, bawling, crying a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Shaking sometimes, wanting to just come into pose the child, just come in and get covered, and cold temperature changes. Apart from hot flushes, but actually, like, you know, they can get really cold. Would not be uncommon. Rigid sometimes. You know, you could be moving and then suddenly it just becomes like rigid. Yeah. And sometimes it mightn't be during the class, it might be afterwards. So it might be they have a nice class, all is good, then they go home and they just feel sad for 3 days. Now, they could just as easily feel happy for 3 days, or they could sleep well for 3 days, but as things are just letting go. And also there's loads of classes where people just come and do their classes and then they leave. So I'm always kind of nervous about setting people up for an expectation that they're going to have like a breakthrough, but 100%, especially when we're working for the day or when we're working deeper. Yeah, and say in the training course we would say, you know, like we if you just want to stop, put your head, lie on the ground, put your comfort, you just do that, and then we'll just put bolsters around you and just leave you there. We'll be holding you energetically, but we'll leave you alone. You know, it's none of our business. We don't need to know. You don't even necessarily need to know. So, and then whenever you want to rejoin us, just come back and rejoin us. But no, we're holding you. We're just not interfering in your process.
Yeah. Feel protected. But at the same time, give you the space to just...
Exactly. And that's actually something that's really interesting for a lot of women, their difficulty to do that. A lot of women want to dive in and fix it and touch them and hug them and give them the tissues and tell me the story and, you know, let me fix it for you. Whereas what I'm asking people to do, and it's really difficult for some women, is just to leave them, hold them energetically, hold them, send them love and leave them. They can ask if you want support, if you want a hug, just tell us, we'll give you a hug. but we're not going to put it on you. We're not going to decide for you what it is you require.
But I suppose is the indoctrination that we all went through of make sure that everybody's fine.
Exactly. And here's the thing that's really interesting about touch. Now, again, is if someone is having this, whatever it is that's going on, if you touch them, you've earthed them, so you've stopped it.
Yeah.
So we do that all the time. Say if you meet someone that's grieving and you give them a hug or whatever, they definitely feel better, and it's earthed, and it's like it's all you have that, that you've got that sensation of like you can just melt into someone's arms. It's like, oh yeah. And so that's really, really useful that we have that is a human trait, that we can do that. We can do that for each other, which is really beautiful. But sometimes people just need to be left to allow. So me as an outsider shouldn't decide you need a hug. Let me interfere, because once I touch you, I've like broken that. I've earthed you. It's like I've now interfered with your process. On the other hand, if you want a hug, you're like, okay, I now want it to stop. Then ask for a hug. We'll give you a hug, and it will stop for you. It'll have that same effect. But you should be the one deciding, not me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's also the learning of us asking for help, which is
so hard.
And saying no, don't touch me. No, you can't.
And don't touch me. Yes, we have these cards. Oh, they're fantastic. So we have cards in the studio, and one side is I'm open, the other side is I'm closed. So don't touch me. I'm in my process. Leave me be. So they turn a card to say I'm closed. And then you can change your mind. There's a joke, like, we're women, we can change our mind. But, because we change our mind. Like, the emotions come, emotions go. So then you just change your mind. You flip over the card. Okay, I'm open now. And then if something comes upon me, okay, I'm closed. Leave me be.
That's very clever. Very clever. Wow. Laura, I've learned so many things. Again. So, thank you so much for all this. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. What a treat.
Thank you. When people want to reach you, where can they do it?
Yeah, so Aruna Yoga, they can just Google Laura Wynne, but Aruna Yoga, ARUNA, yoga is where you'll find me. So that has information about the classes, about the training, about the mentoring, all that kind of work. That'd be cool. Or just email me at laura@arunayoga.ie.
Very well. We'll put it here underneath. Thank you.
Fantastic. I have had such a fun time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much.
It's such a privilege.